Good morning, everyone. Welcome to lecture 14 of Grid and Cloud Computing. In this lecture, we will continue our discussion of services and services-oriented architecture. So, in this lecture, we will see the multi-tier architecture, right? Starting from one-tier architecture to entire architecture. So this multi-tier architecture is a kind of our client-server architecture. One client is there who can request to the server for a desired services, and server can respond to the client's request by providing that services. So this multi-tier architecture is a kind of our client-server architecture. So if you see this particular architecture, it has three layers, you can say. So one is called as your presentation, another is called as your application processing, third one is called as your data management. You know about in computer network, you know about OSI ISO reference model, right? This OSI ISO reference model having 7 layers, right? So here the architecture used in the service oriented architecture, that is especially it is used in the enterprises, and this architecture having three layers, right? That is called as presentation, one layer, another is application processing, another is data management, and these layers are logically separated from each other, as you can see, as you have seen in the OSI ISO reference model. One layer is dependent on another layer, right? So once one layer is computing something, it has to give that to the next layer in order to proceed it further, right? The same thing happens in this multi-tier architecture, right? So in many cases we call it a multi-layer architecture because each and every one we treated as a layer. If you go for one tier, there is one layer. Okay, if it is a two-tier architecture, there are two layers are there, right? So this multi-layer architecture is a two-tier architecture, or it may be a client-server architecture as well, right? But if you go for the traditional systems, right? So if you go for one tier architecture, let me specify the one tier architecture. One tier architecture, what happens? There is a DOM system, right? There is a DOM system, and this system will do all the works. Whatever work done by here, if you see presentation and application processing and data management, everything will be done by this DOM terminal only, right? So there is no logical separations, right? So one user can access to this one client can access to this computer, that's all, and everything is managed in that terminal only. But if you go for this traditional two-tier architecture or client server model, so there is a client, right, who can request to the server, right? Okay, who can request to the server, and whatever services it has requested to the server will reply to that services, right? So traditionally people are using two-tier architecture, but if you see now in the service-oriented architecture, people are using three-tier architecture, four-tier architecture. Like that, it will go to n-tier architecture. So whatever responsibility is there in the one-tier architecture, it is relying on a single computer system, right? So, but if you go for n-tier architecture, the same responsibility is now divided into n parts, right? So you can say first layer is responsible for this work, second layer is responsible for other works, third layer is responsible for other works. So we do sort lot of separations so that maintenance is easier, monitoring is easier, okay? But complexity will increase, but everything is very smooth because each and every layer is responsible for some work. Like in OSI ISO reference model also, you know, physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, presentation layer, session layer, or last one is the application layer. These layers responsibility is different, their protocols are also different, right? And the responsibility given in the data transmission is also different, so that if there is any problem in data transmission, you can easily identify. If you go for this traditional two-tier architecture, it requires clustering. Clustering is nothing but a grouping of various resources and disaster recovery in order to ensure resiliency. So these two things are required. Clustering, you have to group the computers, right? And in case of disaster, how you can recover the data. So that you have to do, right? So as in the traditional two-tier architecture, so various servers are there. These servers may be clustered, okay? And if there is some natural calamity or there is some disaster, so what will happen? It will affect that servers, right? So it requires servers where if such a case occur, such a natural calamity or some problem occur, so what we have to do in the traditional two-tier architecture, the server is made offline, right? Server you have to remove. That means it is converting its mode from online to offline, and we have to repair the server, or you can upgrade the server, or you can replace the server, and in case of new or you can deploy a new application into the server. So everything is done in the offline, and service is interrupted at that particular time, because if you make the servers offline, so that services is not available, right? So in order to avoid that, what happened, we designed means after that it is designed 3-tier information system. In 3-tier information system, there are 3 layers we are considering. One is presentation layer, application processing layer, and data management layer. Further, these 3-tier architecture is divided in further classified into 4-tier architecture, 5-tier architecture. Like that, we can say there are n-tier architecture. So what presentation layer deals with? The same work of application layer, whatever you have seen in OSI ISO reference model in computer network, right? So presentation layer present the information to external entities. Who is the external entities? End user. Our end user is the external entity. Okay. So end user want to transfer the data to another user, right? So this presentation layer is close to the user, right? So and allows interact with the system. So this presentation layer, by the help of this presentation layer, a user can interact with the system. A user can interact with the system, right? So it is a first layer, just like your application layer. Here we call it a presentation layer, right? So next layer is nothing but the business applications, business or application logic layer, or we call simply call as a middleware. So in between two different layer, okay, you have the layer that is called as a business application logic layer or a middleware. So why it is called middleware? It is in between two different layer, and it abstract the many things. Okay, the information available in the bottom layer, that is your resource management layer or data layer. Okay, the complexity of that layer is not shown to the user. User is sitting here, right? User can use the presentation layer in order to ask some informations or in order to desire a particular services, right? Then business logic layer is the most important bit, because it will do all the works, right? And it also provide the middleware, right, between the presentation layer and your resource management layer, right? So the programs that implement the actual operations, the main operations, okay, requested by the client or the end user, okay, through the presentation layer is done in the business layer, right? So business layer is more important in comparison to other layers, right? Once a request is received by the presentation layer, the desired operation will be done at the business layer, okay? So it also responsible for user authentications. So in order to validate the user, whether the user is a genuine user or the user is a unauthorized user. So for that, it also provides authentication mechanism by providing a specific username and password to each and every user. And it also allow access to the resources. The resources is available in the bottom layer, that is your resource management or data layer. So in order to access the resources in the bottom layer, so this layer has some logic. By using that logic, the user request can be mapped to the particular resource management layer, okay, or for particular resources. It also responsible for query processing. If any query is asked by the user, right, regarding its applications, so it will provide the status of that particular query. It is removing the load of the database server. The servers are present in the bottom layer, so its load is reduced because everything will be monitored in the business application logic layer. If coming back to the last layer, that is resource management or data layer, it implements different data sources of an information system, right? Hardware part is also available in the bottom layer. Okay, in which so you can say, for example, a user is asking, many users are asking for the resources. You can map these resources with the bottom layer, right? That is the resource management layer. You have to decide that which layer, which resources will be mapped to which particular user, right? So if you difference between the 3-tier architecture and 2-tier architecture, in 2-tier architecture, one client is there, another side server is there. Traditionally, people are using this 2-tier architecture. So what we have done here the application logic is separated from the resource management. If you go to 2-tier architecture, there is a presentation layer, and this resource management and business application logic layer is merged. The responsibility given by business application logic layer, okay, and our resource management layer is different in the case of 3-tier architecture. But in 2-tier architecture, this responsibility is merged. That's why you have two layers. One is your presentation layer, another is your called as your application logic plus resource management layer in the two-tier architecture. But three-tier architecture, we have separated it so that the complexity can be reduced, right? The complexity can be reduced and you can do easy maintenance. Like I told you in the previous case, that servers are repaired. Okay, servers are made offline and they are repaired or upgrading and new application development is done. Okay, that part you can avoid in the three-tier architecture. So this is the complete architecture you can see in this diagram. So there is a client, okay. You know that the client access to any system by the help of a web browser, right? Maybe Google Chrome, maybe Firefox, maybe Internet Explorer, right? Then request is reaching to the presentation layer, right? Presentation layer is responsible for the web services, that is WS, right? Any web services is there, that is maintained by the presentation layer. Then presentation layers forward the request to the application logic layer, which is very much important. It is doing the maximum works because it is a middleware, right? And it also coordinates with the presentation layer and data storage layer, right? And if a client is require any file server or require any database server, then the application logic will map the request of the client with the file server. Okay. In this way, the request can be provided to the client, right? That's why it is a bi-directional one. Multiple clients and multiple requests can be solved at the same time. So this architecture is called as a three-tier architecture. But if you go for two-tier architecture, so you have two things. One is your presentation layer. Okay, obviously client and web browser will be there, right? Presentation layer will be there, and these two are now combined in the two-tier architecture. Okay, that application logic layer and data storage both are in the same level, right? That means application server, file server, and database servers are present in the same layer. So the maintenance is little bit difficult, but if you go for various separations, then you can monitor the resources properly, and you can also reduce the complexity. Similarly, if you go for some other architecture, it may also say that if you go for four-tier architecture, it may happen that the file server or database server is moved to another layer, right? So that you can go for four-tier architecture. So coming back to this three-tier versus entire architecture, or you can say four-tier architecture, this data tier, that is the data tier is the bottom one, that is the data storage, which is having your file server and database server. Okay, this data tier is split into two layers. One is data storage layer, okay, or data storage tier, or the another is data access tier, right? So now there is another separation, right? This data storage is now completely divided into two parts. One is data storage and another is data access, right? In this way, you can reduce the complexity. So it purely depends upon what kind of applications you require. Based upon that application, you can decide whether two-tier is better or three-tier is better or entire is better, right? But what happens in entire architecture? Entire architecture is characterized by the functional decomposition of applications, service components, and their distributed deployments, right? Whatever the functionalities are there, so they are decomposed. Any applications you are submitting, whatever functionality is available, okay, what we are doing, we are decomposing this into multiple parts, and each and every part can be assigned to one tier based upon their capabilities, and you can get your services, right? So here you can see, and web service can be seen as another layer. So if you see in the top part, here if you see in the presentation layer, you have two things, web service and web server. So what you can make, you can separate these layers also. I can divide this layer, I can call one layer is called as web service, another layer is called as a presentation layer. And presentation layer is only responsible for web server, not for the web services, right? That's why it is saying web services. Okay, web services can be seen as an another tier, right, which is top of the middleware. Okay, you know that application logic is the middleware. So on top of middleware, I can create a services web service layer and application integration infrastructure, allowing system to interact with a standard protocol across the internet. So if you separate it, it may be above the web services or it may be above the web server also, right? So in this case, they are saying that on top of this application logic, you may have web service layer, right? So that these web services can be separated from the presentation layer, so that the complexity will be little bit more reduced, right? And they can interact. How you can interact? You can have to interact through the internet and by using a standard protocol. So in each and every layer, you have a standard protocol. By looking into that protocol, like we discussed in the last class about HTTP protocols, FTP protocol, SMTP protocol. So these protocols are used with respect to the layers, each layer having different protocols. So these layers, these protocols you can use to interact with the different layers. Okay, next we'll discuss about one important thing that is called grid services and OGSA. OGSA stands for your Open Grid Service Architecture. We'll discuss more about OGSA in the last module, but here it is very much important because it is closely related to your service-oriented architecture. So Open Grid Service Architecture is developed by one working group that is called as your OGSA working group. So as per their name, their group name, they called this architecture as Open Grid Services Architecture, right? Open Grid Services Architecture. So this group belongs to your Global Grid Forum. This is a very good forum. Like whenever in online also, whenever you want to search a particular thing, you are getting the responses of various forum, right? So this forum developed this architecture, that is Open Grid Service Architecture. Later this GGF, that is Global Grid Forum, is renamed as Open Grid Forum, that is OGF, because open has a specific meaning. I will tell you later. And it is merged with your enterprise grid alliances, means OGSA working group, okay, of GGF, or you can say OGF, now it is called as OGF, is merged with your enterprise grid alliances. These two things are merged, and it is providing the service oriented architecture. Why it is important, why it is very famous, that's Open Grid Service Architecture, because it aims to define a common standard and open architecture for grid based applications. So I told you in some class also, whenever you are deploying your application in one cloud service provider and you have planned to change from one cloud service provider to another cloud service provider, so what will happen? The APIs used in the one cloud service provider is completely different from APIs used in the another cloud service provider. So you may face some problem. That is called your lock-in problem, right? So in order to avoid this lock-in problem, you can use the service-oriented architecture, because service-oriented architecture, maybe your OGSA in the grid case, okay, aims to define a common standard for all, right? There is open architecture for all the applications. So you can easily move from one cloud service provider to another cloud service provider. So here this open refers to both processes to develop the standards and standard themselves. So you can develop the standards or you can define the standards themselves also. Okay, that's why the term they have changed from Global Grid Forum to Open Grid Forum. So why it is intended, what is the main use and what kind of things you can do in OGSA? OGSA is intended to facilitate use and management of resources across distributed and heterogeneous environment. You know, the resources whatever used in the clouds and grid, that is not in the single place, right? They are present in various part of the geographically distributed all over the world, right? So they are completely distributed, and the environment is heterogeneous, because all the things, it may happen that in one case you have 100 servers, another case you may have 1000 servers, another case you may have 10,000 servers. Okay, it is completely heterogeneous, right? And these machines are also not having different same configurations, right? So they are completely heterogeneous. Their works are also different. One computer may take 2 seconds, another computer may take 2 hours as well, right? So this is OGSA, what it can do, it can manage these resources, whatever resources you have deployed through all over the world, right? Okay, these geographically distributed resources can be monitored by the help of this Open Grid Services Architecture. And it can provide seamless quality of services. So whatever quality of services is required for the user, right, that will be fulfilled by the provider by using OGSA. There is no problem with providing the quality of services. Okay, so people are using OGSA because it is providing seamless quality of services, right? The quality of services is not compromised at any cost. It is also intended to provide an open and published interfaces in order to provide interoperability of diverse resources. Interoperability, you can change your resources from one to another one without any problem, right? Because the standard is a open standard, or it may be a common standard used by various providers. It also exploit the industry standard integration technology. That is very much important. Whatever industry technology, in the industry prospective integration technology is required, so it is providing that technology. So it is creating interest of the industry to move to OGSA architecture. It also provide develop standards, right, that achieves interoperability. Okay, it also integrate and virtualize and manage services and resources in a distributed heterogeneous environment. Okay, you can integrate one web services may be integrated with another web service, and you can create a virtual organization also, right? This virtual organization is going to provide you single system image. Single system image says that your complete system is treated as a single system, right? And it can manage various services and resources in a geographically distributed environment, or you can say distributed environment. It also deliver functionality as a loosely coupled. Loosely coupled means one system is not dependent on another system. They don't have any master and slave relationship. So if a computer will a computer is crashed, right, or if a computer services is not available, so it will not affect to another computer systems. So it is following the concept of loosely coupled system. Interacting service aligned with the industry accepted web service standard. Whatever industry accepted, because many things are there which is there in the academia but not in the industry, right? So many protocols are defined under IEEE. Okay, that is a basic standards, okay, provided by IEEE. So these standards you can get by the help of your OGSA. So whatever the industry technologies are there, integration technology or web services required, that can be used by that can be provided by your OGSA. That's why people's means are using, many industries are using this OGSA things, right? So a grid service, if you see how a web service is different, because these terms are used in the grid computing, later it is extended to cloud computing. A grid service implements one or more interfaces, right? It can go for you, a particular service may require one or more interfaces. Don't think that each and every service having a particular interface. It may have one or more interfaces, right? And if you go to one, if you concentrate on a particular interface, that interface may define a set of operations, right? A single grid service may have more interfaces, one or more interfaces. Each interface may have a set of operations. So you imagine, based upon the interfaces, you have multiple operations are there. So that are invoked by exchanging a defined sequence of messages, right? You can exchange the messages by getting these particular services, right? A client can communicate to a server, or a peer can communicate to another peer, right? So how they are providing, this is providing by the Open Grid Service Infrastructure, that is OGSI. So this OGSA having a infrastructure that is called as Open Grid Service Infrastructure. Like, you know, in cloud case also, infrastructure as a service is providing you the computation storage and compute power and your storage power. Okay, hardware, everything is there in the infrastructure layer, right? So in this OGSA architecture, if you see, this Open Grid Service Infrastructure is there. This OGSA is defined by this GGF only, that is Global Grid Forum. Now it is called as Open Grid Forum. So this OGSA, whatever services is provided, basically it is providing grid services. These OGSA services are fall into 7 broad areas. 7 areas are defined in under OGSA. First one is called as infrastructure services, right? Infrastructure services says it refers to a common functionality such as naming the resources, whatever resources is available in the infrastructure. You can name these resources, or you can provide a unique one to each and every services, typically required by higher level services, because it is required in the higher level services. So these services can be provided by OGSA. Second one is nothing but your execution management services. So whenever a user submits a work to OGSA architecture, so what it will happen, it will request to OGSA architecture, right? We can call that one as a job or a task, right? So main objective is that the user submits its work to this OGSA architecture, right? So this request can be treated as a task, right? So starting from beginning of a task to completion of the task, everything will be managed by this execution management services, right? So starting and managing the task, right? It may be a task, it may be a job also. So job is nothing but a set of tasks, right? Job is nothing but, if you decompose the job into multiple parts, so they are called as your task, or each and every task, if you want to decompose, then you can call it them by subtask, right? So it may be a complex workflow also. So what may be happen in the complex workflow? Complex workflow is look like a directed acyclic graph, your DAG. In directed acyclic graph, you know there is a root node and it is connected to other nodes, right? For example, root node has two children, right? Again, one node is having another children, right? Let's say this node is also having another children, but it is dependent on this particular node. After this node is dependent on this particular node. So this is directed acyclic graph, right? This directed acyclic graph you can also call as a workflows, right? So workflows you can call, right? So you know that until unless this first root task will complete, you cannot start the work of these two tasks, right? Once the root task is completed, these two tasks can be run parallelly, right? So once these two tasks are completed, then only you can execute this task. For example, this task is completed, then you can start this task, right? But if this task is completed and this is not completed, then you cannot start this particular task, because this task is dependent on two tasks. One is this particular task and this particular task. So until unless these two are completed, so you cannot start another task, right? So this is the life cycle of everything will be managed by this execution management services. It also deals with the placement and provisioning of the resources, right? Which resource you will provision to which task that you have to decide, and you have to see that if you want to deploy any kind of virtual machines, anything, the placement works also done by this execution management services. And OGS is also providing, it's another broad areas, is nothing but your data management services. So you can move your data, right, as and when required. You can maintain the replicate copies, because data is, if you keep in a single system, it may be destroyed at any, maybe destroyed by the natural calamity or destroyed by some other hardware failure or software failure. That's why you have to maintain the replicated copies. So once you maintain the replicated copies, you have to make sure that there is a data consistency. Data should be consistent. Otherwise, one copy may have different thing, another copy may have different things. So whenever you want to merge two things, then you may face problem, right? Because these two copies are completely different, right? So you have to make sure that if you are going for replicated copies, you have to ensure that each and every copies, whatever stored in the different servers, so they should have the same things, right? They should not have any different thing, right? So you can run different queries in order to get the data, okay, and update, transfer the data in new formats. So like I told you in BM case, then we are using OBF format, right? So similarly, in service oriented architecture, we are using XML format. Assume that in next future, some other technology will come, it is capable to transfer into the new formats. It also handle the issues like data consistency, as I mentioned in the replicated copies, persistency and integrity of the data. So the data should not be violate any kind of integrity constants, right? So it can be done by three interfaces. These data management services, you can access the data, and the data is stored in a data factory. And data management, you have to manage the data so that you can represent, you can assess, and you can create and managing the data, right? So these are the three interfaces are provided by data management services in order to store a data to, in order to access a data at any point of time. So you can move your data at any point at any particular time. The next broad areas is called your resource management services. In resource management services, resource is monitored. You can reserve the resources. For example, a user request your resources for a particular time. Let's say morning 9 to evening 9. So you have to reserve the resources for that particular user, right? And you can deploy the resources, okay, in one physical machine or to another physical machine if you want to switch, or you can deploy a particular virtual machine in a physical machines, and you can configure as needed to meet the application of quality of service requirements, right? So whatever quality of service requirements are specified by the user, you have to provide the resources accordingly, right? So you can reserve the resources. If the resources is not available, you can reject the request of the particular user also, right? And this layer requires two things. One is called your information model, which deals with the semantics part, and data model, which deals with the representation part. So next services is nothing but the security services. In security services, the complete system is treated as a virtual organization, so that security policies you can enforce in a particular organizations. So it may happen that one organization security mechanism is different from other organizations. Like your institute's security mechanism is different, our institute's may be different, right? So various services like authentications, authorizations, and integrity assurance would be given by this broad area of services, right? So authentication is very important because unauthorized user cannot access. Authorization is you are delegating your power to others, right? That is your authorizations. And you have to also ensure that integrity is maintained so that nobody can violate the things, right? Another broad area is your information services, and information services refers to the dynamic data and events, dynamic data and events that is used for the status monitoring. You can monitor the resources, right? And the data, you can process the data, okay, whatever data you have in the OGSA. So that data you can process, right? You can process the data, okay. The data can be processed, right, so that updated informations you can transport to the required things. Information service also provides one of the important part, that is called troubleshooting. So whenever your computer is facing some problem, so what you need, it is showing some troubleshooting, right? It is giving a list of steps, you are following that steps in order to fix a particular error, right? The same thing is provided in the OGSA services using this particular area, that is called your information services. Next is called your self-management services. In order to provide self-management services, you need automations. If everything is automated, the cost is also reduced, and many things will be automatically done, so that you need not process your data, like you are processing your data to get the informations. Such type of things will be done automatically by writing the codes, so that the cost will also reduced and complexity of managing the system will be reduced. So automation plays an important role in the self-management services. So you see this one here, if you see this OGSA architecture is a base architecture for your service oriented architecture. OGSA architecture consists of three things. Is one is called as fabric layer, that is the bottom layer. Next, between you have middle layer. This middle layer provides the 7 areas, whatever we discussed in the previous slides, like infrastructure services, execution management services, data management services, resource management services, security services, information services, self-management services is provided by this OGSA. And OGSA is having this OGSI, as I already discussed. OGSI, that is your open grid service infrastructure, is provided by OGSI in the fabric layer. In top layer, you have applications where user can directly interact with the OGSA architecture, right? Top layer is almost always called as your applications layer. If not, we call it a by presentation layer. So various applications, you can say there is a space application, or there may be a application related to drug development. The application may be related to DNA. The application may be related to, let's say, universe, or it may be any kind of applications can be submitted to the OGSA architecture. So now we'll do one poll, then we'll continue. So please answer this question. You have 30 seconds. Last 5 seconds. Okay. What is the correct answer? OGSA?
Open Grid Services Architecture, sir.
Open Grid Services Architecture. Okay. This OGSA has been adopted as a reference to grid architecture. Later it is also referenced, like you know that OSI ISO reference model. Many interviews people are also asking in computer network, means whether you know about OSI ISO reference model. It is having 7 layers. So people are asking why it is called as a reference model. So it is a reference. It is not a base model. By looking into these reference, you can design your own model, right? That's why this OSI ISO is called as your reference model, right? It is you can refer this model to develop new models. Similarly, OGSA is also a reference grid architecture by a number of grid projects. Like I told you, Globus Toolkit, right? GT, that is Globus Toolkit. That I'll tell you that the first prototype of grid service implementations, the grid computing implementation, is discussed in the January 29, 2002 at a Globus Toolkit tutorial. So there is a Globus Toolkit tutorial in a conference. There is a tutorials are there. which was held at Ergona National Laboratory. So there the first prototype of a grid is grid services implementation was discussed, right? After that, there is a lot of development done in the grid architecture in the year of 2008 and 9. Cloud was finally developed, right? So this creation and destruction of a transit grid service can be done dynamically. You can create, like you know that virtual machines, you can create and you can destroy as per your requirement. Similarly, this creation and destruction of a transit grid services, you can do dynamically. Suppose in a particular application, like for example, I'll show you one demo in some other classes about SCTI at home. We already discussed what is SCTI. I told you, source for extraterrestrial intelligence at home. For this project, suppose I require 1 million of computer system, right? So what I will do, I'll create a transit grid services, right? And let's say I am executing instances of SCTI. After that, I don't require to run that particular instances, right? So I can create a transit grid services, and after my work is over, I can destroy it also, right? This OGSA applies a set of WSDL extensions. I told you in service-oriented architecture, people are using this language, that is WSDL languages. So here also OGSA applies a set of WSDL extensions to represent the identifiers necessary to implement a grid service instance across the system. In order to implement that, whatever things are there in WSDL, that is, you can be extended, right? And the key extensions used in the grid service reference is your grid service handle, that is GSH, and grid service reference. But the main problem happens here is that incompatibility with some current web service tools. So whatever web services are provided by service-oriented architecture, these web services may not be compatible, right? Incompatible. There may be one web service may require some requirement, another web service is providing other requirements, right? Like cloud service providers are using different APIs. Similarly, here web services may have different things, right? So there may be incompatibility happen. So possible extensions are required so that you can avoid this incompatibility, or you have to properly utilize the interoperability things, right? Okay, this web service resource framework, that is WSRF, and web service addressing and web service notifications. Just like in mobile also you are getting notifications. Similarly, these web service notifications, these are also proposed by OASIS. And if you see, there are various WSRF, this is web service resource framework related interface operations are discussed here. If you see, there are two types of specifications you can see here. One is called as your WSRF specifications. Okay, another is called as WSRF related specifications. So this first specification having your WS resource properties, WS resource lifetime, WS resource group, and WS base fault, right? So if you see, resource is nothing but your servers, right? Or various, in some sense, we call the resources as the services also. So if you see the resource properties, whether a particular resource, what is the capability of the resources, and whether the resources will be available 24/7 or not, what is the reliability of the services, everything. These properties of the resources, like each and every file is having a properties, the resources is maintained by this WS, right? WS resource properties, right? So it standardizes the definition of resource properties and its association with the WS interface, and the message defining the query and update capabilities against resource properties, right? Any message you want to put as a query, or you want to update anything and anything, so you can use this WS resource properties. Similarly, starting of a resources to ending of a resources, like you can know that whether the resources are properly utilized or not, that can be done by this resource lifetime, right? The span of a particular period of time, we want to know that whether the resources is available properly or not, right? That you can done by resource lifetime. And service groups, right? Similarly, if any fault occur in the resources, that can be identified by base fault. Similarly, WSRS related specifications is providing the notifications and addressing. You can get different notifications. You can get the broker details. You can get the base notifications. You can see the various topics also, subscriptions, that is known as your top topics, right? That you can do with this WSRF and in its specifications, right? So if you go for a plain web service, right? It is like, suppose if you assume that there is a plain web service is there, they are simply called as stateless. Stateless means, for example, suppose you are present in a particular state, you are moving to another state, right? So your current state, let's say this is your current state, it depends upon your previous state, right? That is called as your state-based system. But if you go for plain web services, it is completely stateless. There is no state. If there is no state, then what will happen? You cannot remember the information. Okay, keep the state from one invocation to another invocations, right? So whenever you are moving one from to another, you are not keeping any kind of informations, right? So each and every things will be treated as a new things, right? Because you don't have any records of the previous invocations, right? So no idea about the previous invocation. What you have done in the previous states, it is not there because it is completely stateless. So you can convert a stateless services to the state services, right? How you can move a stateless service to the state-based services? So by using, if you are, whenever your message is communicated, that is carried in the message, they receive whatever message you are receiving by observing that message. Okay, a stateless service can remember the state, right? Which message is received, and because each and every message is having the state information of the previous things, right? Which state has sent this message, which state has forwarded this message, which path it is following from the starting to ending, everything will be recorded in the stateless services, right? So this could be done by a token remembered in a cookie, right? In computer also you have cookies, so that you are getting details about a particular website, right? And they are getting your choices also, right? On the client side and the database or cache, you can use also database to keep the informations, and you can use the cache also assessed by the services. So by looking into these things, or by following this particular thing, a stateless services can be converted to a state services. So the state information of a web service is kept in a separate entity called as requests. Sometimes the state information of a services is called as your resources. Resources is not every state information you have to keep in order to say that whether a resource is busy, or resource is idle, or a resource is in the sleep mode. Everything will be monitored. So you may have a particular service, suppose like say for example Flipkart is accessing a particular services. The service is maybe mapped to more than one resources. Flipkart may own 100 servers also, right? So it is mapping with more than one resources. But how you can distinguish one resource with another resource? By the help of a unique key. You have to define a unique key for each and every resources, right? So that you can locate the resources, you can assign the resources. Like I already mentioned, that each resource is having a MAC address, like your computer system is having MAC address, and you have IP address as well. So IP address, by looking at this IP address, you can locate the system, you can locate a particular network, right? So that resources can be mapped to a particular services. So these resources can be either in memory, or it may be persistent, right? Persistent, it may be stored in the secondary storage or a file or database, right? You can store these things, right? And you can pair the resources with your web services. Okay, the web services and resources can be paired, right? And for this also there is a AWS resources is there. It is responsible for pairing the web services with resources. The way of addressing a specific WS resources is to use a qualified endpoint reference construct proposed by WS addressing. So this qualified endpoint reference is proposed in WS, that the web service addressing specifications, where you can provide a specific address to the WS resources. But each and every resources can be assigned with a proper address. So resource store the actual data items, that is also consist of resource properties. As we discussed, these resource properties contain details about the particular resources. So there is two live demonstrations you can search. That one is called as your system, which is an example of your service-oriented architecture, other service-oriented architecture. Another one is small grid, is also an example of your service-oriented architecture. So if you see one of the examples, like US Defense, that is US Department of Defense. So they have coined this net-centric services, and US military is using this one. It introduced a set of net-centric services to be used in the global information grid. So they are using this net-centric services in the grid, so that each and every services is doing some of the functionalities. And if you see, this is a part of your WS star. I mentioned WS star may be WS addressing, it may be WS agreement, it may be WS coordinations, like we discussed here, WS resources, WS addressing, right? WS anything may be there, or higher application layer in the OGSA. So what kind of things is provided by this US military, that I'll tell you in this slide. So various services, like you can see, enterprise service management, security, messaging, discovery, mediations, collaboration, user assistance, storage, application, environment control services. These are the services provided by these net-centric services, right? So you can develop a particular web services. Suppose a user require a subset of these services, then accordingly you can provide the services, right? And each and every services is the list of examples are also there. For example, if you see mediation is nothing but agent. Okay, if a user is not comfortable to use a particular services, it can take the help of the agent. Okay, it can also provide the brokering services, right? Brokering services is one, a broker is there to provide you the services, right? Various services. It can map the set of resources with the set of request. It can map, right? Because multiple users are requesting the request, the multiple user requests are coming, so it can be mapped with multiple with the resources, so that you can locate a particular users work with a particular resources. This brokering you can do. Okay, transformations and aggregations are the examples of this meditation. So these are the services provided by this US Department of Defense with respect to these net-centric services. Another example, you can see that services in CICC. CICC stands for your chemical informatics and cyber infrastructure collaboratory. It is a nothing but a chemical information grid. Like previous one is called as your global information grid. It is a particular applications. Each and every services is a particular applications. The goal of this CICC project, if you see, the main goal of this particular project is to do the experimental obtained data. Okay, by the help of cluster analysis, you can do data mining techniques. You can apply data mining technique, or you can do the quantum simulations or first principle calculations on the experimentally obtained data. Whatever data is obtained by experimentations, by after getting this data, right? Those who are working in the machine learning in the final year project, they may aware of these things, that you require data, right? So that data, you once you get the data, you can do a lot of analysis in the data in order to predict something, right? So they are applying this cluster analysis, data mining, quantum simulations technique on experimentally obtained data on small molecules. Okay, small molecules, right? On small molecules with a potential use of drug development. Like in this corona situations also, people are developing the drug, right? So if you once you get the data of symptoms of the people, then you can develop the drug for a particular things, right? So if you want to go for a small molecule data, you can visit these databases, that is NIH public PubChem and DTF databases are there for small molecule data. If you want to go details about this data, but if you want to go for large molecule data, you can go for Varuna or Protein Data Bank or PDB Bind, and MODB are providing the large molecule data. You can see also the mix of system and application service used in the CICC in the next two slide. So if you see here, see there are various services or standards used in the CICC. One standard you can see here, that workflow monitoring. Workflow is nothing but a directed acyclic graph, and their architecture is different. Like various workflows are also there, like with respect to earthquake, there is a workflow is there. With respect to biology domain, there is a earthquake is there. With respect to environmental science, there is a workflow is there. So by looking into these workflows, you can generate your data and you can do the analysis. Authentication, authorization is also a service provided by CICC. Registry and discovery, like I mentioned, UDDI is responsible for this registry and discovery, which is provided by CICC. And there is a portable portals and portlets are there in the CICC. Other services like file services, NISDTP database services, PubMed services, SPRESI services, Varuna database services, VO table data tables, and web services. Various services are provided by CICC. So this is located. This is a point to this chemical information grid. Previous one is your this project is belongs to your chemical information grid, but the previous one is belongs to your global information grid. So with respect to a particular services, you can go for a different type of services, like Tox tree services is also provided, CDK, lot of services are provided. So these many services are provided. If you are interested in these services, you can explore these particular areas. So these are the some examples where service-oriented architecture is used. So in the next class, we will discuss the rest part of the service-oriented architecture.